I'm really excited right now because we have with us in the studio somebody that I already feel like I'm not entitled to, but I already feel like it's an old friend, that she's an old friend. And I'm also thrilled because whenever I get to meet what I call the pioneers, the people who have gone before, the people, now see, I'm going to get emotional, but the people whose shoulders we all stand on. Honestly, as a mom, you know, there were people who came before me who had the machetes and hacked the path.
And we really had those machetes,
yes,
believe me.
and you were like, you know, chief machete holder here in Los Angeles. So I thank you. Let's start with that. I thank you, and it's a privilege to be here with you.
It is my great pleasure. It's kind of my purpose in life.
Well, thrilled. And for those of you who don't know, because I haven't said yet, because I'm all at Twitter, this is Pat Grayson DeJong. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, and, you know, I want to start by just doing a quick overview of, you know, who you are and what all you've done so people can have an appreciation. And then I want to go back and dig into these different areas.
Okay, good.
You're an autism mom.
I am.
And you're a mom because you have 3 kids.
I am.
And your son, who is on the autism spectrum, is in his 40s. It's okay for us to say that?
It's perfectly fine. I'm not adverse to anyone knowing I have a 48-year-old son with autism.
And nobody would believe that, first of all. At some point, we have to ask what kind of skincare she uses because you look great. And when you started out with your child being diagnosed with autism, you were not somebody who had advanced degrees in education or how to set up a program. You didn't know anything about autism. And so what year was it that he was diagnosed?
Let's see, 1972 or 3. 3, I think, 1973.
So before it was on really anybody's radar, before there was internet, before, I mean, we're talking about the dark ages of autism.
Right, the very dark ages, because he wasn't really diagnosed until he went to, he was nearly 5 when he was finally diagnosed.
But at this point in time, you know, so from there to now, you have really shaped the way autism was dealt with educationally here in Los Angeles. You have been a mover and a shaker. Yes. You, like, I don't even know where to begin. I would love to read this entire resume, but it's extensive. You created programs here in Los Angeles. You were at the forefront. Honestly, you were one of the authors of creating the program that people used here for so long in Los Angeles that made such a huge difference.
Correct.
You went back to school, you became somebody, you were in classrooms, and you kind of, every time you needed to know something more, it seems like you went, well, okay, I'll learn that next.
I just never, I was never satisfied with the status quo when I could see that there was more that could be done.
Well, you know, I mean, I literally have goosebumps right now because I think you're the mom that we all would like to be. Not all of us are capable of doing all the things that you did, but I think it's important to talk about your spirit and the can-do attitude. And my understanding, because you gave me some information that I could read beforehand, you got to write a book, Pat.
I have a book in the works that it's very hard for me emotionally to get into it. Even writing down this stuff for you, you know, so that you could understand where I came from, was difficult for me. And so
well, Lifetime, if you're watching, Lifetime needs to make a movie about your life. Honestly, no, seriously, about what you were able to do, because everybody should know and be in awe, and grateful. Let's say that. Everybody should be grateful. I know you're like, well, I just did what I had to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But amazing, because as I was reading about you, I kind of had thought, because I've known about you for many years, and I kind of had thought that you were somebody who was like a teacher, and that then your child was diagnosed and you went, okay, but that wasn't it.
No, none of those things. I was just a mom.
You were a mom. You were somebody who had graduated high school and had gotten down to the business of getting a degree in MRS, which when you were going to be married and have kids, and that was what you were going to do.
That's right. I went to work because that was the expectation in my family, that you don't need college, you're a woman. And even when I married my husband, who was an engineer, he said, well, what a waste. College is really a waste for women, which kind of bothered me. It always bothered me. His attitude certainly changed as he got older. And
I'm sure. And as he spent time with you.
The person who I am.
Right, right. And you weren't going to sit back and just say, I'm a passenger on this ride through life. You decided that you were going to be turning some of the gears.
Exactly.
You're going to make it happen.
I had to. There was no one out there to help me.
Yeah.
I would call numbers and run into block walls. There was nobody there. And so I just kind of had to create it myself.
Amazing. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. So he's your middle child, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you had already had the experience of having a child and seeing how a child kind of develops typically.
Mm-hmm.
You'd had some
younger siblings, much younger siblings, and so I kind of knew.
And you'd had the heartbreak of losing a child,
I did.
which I'm so sorry about.
I did.
And where did that fall in terms of
Right before Chris.
Okay.
Right before.
So you've come off of having a child that has died, the ultimate heartbreak that nobody, and I'm so sorry, and I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
It was tough. It wasn't easy.
Right? Then you have this
awful.
new child that comes along, and he's different, and you can tell it pretty much out the gate.
From the get-go, from day one, I knew there was something not right with this child.
And I must say, for those of you who are watching, that I feel like autism has changed a little bit over the years in terms of, but the story, certainly when my child was diagnosed, that's the story that I had always heard, was the kids who, from day one, they just, something, wasn't there. You described that he seemed to be constantly uncomfortable, that he cried all the time.
Stressed. And when I picked him up, he was stiff like a board. He wouldn't conform to my body.
Yeah, he didn't cuddle into you.
No, and I just thought, there is something not right here.
Yeah.
And I think early on they thought it might be CP. They put him on some medication for a bit, which did nothing for him.
Yeah.
By the way, we were just medicating for the sake of medicating because it wasn't working for him.
And you're in this space of having questions then about, I've had this child that seems to be fine. We're getting a phone ring, but it's okay. We're going to ignore it.
Yeah.
I
apologize.
No, don't worry about it. It's a live show and things always happen. I remember to put mine on Do Not Disturb before we started, but otherwise it would have been mine. So don't worry about it. It'll stop in a minute, and then during a break we'll silence it. But in any case, so I can't imagine in the early 70s. Here you are, you've lost a child, now you've got a new child that you're going, something is wrong. Mm-hmm. There isn't the internet, but you go to your doctors and say something's going on, and I'm just going to guess they're not listening.
Not. Absolutely not. They kept saying, you can't compare him with his brother, who was a perfectly wonderful child, the child everyone dreams of having.
Yeah.
He did everything right on time. He was sweet, adorable, smart as a whip. And then we have Chris, and he's none of those things. And he wasn't developing in the way I knew that he needed to develop. But when I would go to the pediatrician, all of my complaints, all of my worries fell on deaf ears.
Right.
And I want to say here that, and I mentioned it in my notes to you, that by them denying that there was anything wrong, not listening to parents, and I think pediatricians now listen more than they used to listen.
Yeah, but they're still not listening.
Yeah, well,
I hear you. I think they are listening more, and I think parents have more information.
Yes.
But they're still not listening that much.
Right, but it kept my husband and his family in denial for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because Chris looked so beautiful and so normal.
Yeah.
And he had these gorgeous blue eyes and pretty little mouth. He was just beautiful.
Yeah.
How can there be anything wrong with this child?
And then speak a little bit, because at that point, if you're the one person and you're saying something's not right, and the doctor's saying, nah, everything's right. So now your husband is like, well, I'm going to listen. I'm going to defer to the doctor and his family. I'm going to defer.
Exactly.
Then you become the island of a person, and the worst possible thing for a mom that it's like, oh, it's you, and you are saying there's something wrong with your child, which no parent wants. You don't want to be the person saying that.
I didn't, but I also am a realist.
Yeah.
And I just kept saying, I know what is normal, and this isn't normal.
Yeah.
This is, well, it's probably normal for him, you know, and that's what I kept getting.
And honestly, that's the truth, but where's the help in that?
Yeah, none. I mean, I wasn't getting sleep. The child was having trouble. I couldn't even breastfeed him because he was so, the anxiety and the stiffness, and he would suckle in 4 hours of feeding. Each feeding was it was a nightmare.
I can't even imagine.
A nightmare.
And in amongst that, it doesn't take too long, but eventually you also have another child. So you've got, bookends of these. But at what point did it start to turn a corner for you where you because you say he didn't get diagnosed until 5.
Right. He
what
was
made the
diagnosed
difference
with other things. What did they call it? Neurologically handicapped. And as soon as I got that diagnosis, I knew it was covered everything.
Right.
So that wasn't specific enough for me, and I didn't buy into it. I said, yes, there's something wrong with his brain, but this is not it. And I started reading everything I could about it. We didn't have the internet or computers or any of those things. Right. There were 2 books that in my library that I could go to.
Okay.
Connor's Autism and Bettelheim. And of course, Bettelheim, as soon as I read that, I thought, this is awful. Yeah. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
But Connor, kind of, I could see that Christopher was exhibiting all of these signs. But when I would go to the pediatricians, and I didn't just settle on 1, I went to 3.
Yeah.
All giving me the same answer. No, I don't think he is, because he will give you some eye contact. Even though he's not talking and he seems remote, we can't say that this is what it is.
Did they bring up the word autism to you? Or I know you read something in the LA Times.
I brought it to them.
Was that the first time in the LA Times that you heard the word autism and thought maybe?
Yes, I didn't know what it was. And I don't know whether you know Connie and Harvey Lapin, but they were movers and shakers along with myself. I was with that group. They said... I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Well, I wanted to go back to so when did you first hear autism?
Okay,
when was autism?
It was an article about their son.
Okay. In the LA Times.
Sean, in the LA Times, okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Anyway, the more I read, I think there were 4 or 5 continuous articles, the more frightened I became. And Chris was 18 months at that time.
Okay.
And I said, this is Christopher. This is my son. Even though Sean seemed a little be more impacted by it than Chris, I knew that it was autism.